Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is one of the most popular martial arts in recent decades, made popular by the creation of UFC in the mid-90s. It is practiced in a number of countries around the world and used for things such as fitness, self-defense, and sport. Hi everyone, my name's Damien, and in this video I want to talk through my experiences taking up Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in the last 12 months. So some of you might be wondering what Brazilian Jiu Jitsu actually is, and how it's different from other martial arts. You can think of Jiu Jitsu as a fighting system and competitive sport that uses grappling, that's grabbing or gripping an opponent to submit them, like put their elbow in an uncomfortable position, or to secure a dominant position, which is maybe like sitting on their chest or something like that. The emphasis being normally to get them onto the ground. Movements are designed to be energy efficient, helping you to stay in a fight longer, which is already quite an exhausting experience. The ideal is to win a fight using technique rather than by pure strength, although some strength is involved to do the techniques. The assumption is you are fighting an opponent that is stronger than you so that you won't be able to win by strength. When used in fighting for self-defense or purposes, Jiu-Jitsu also includes a range of strikes like punches, kicks, slaps, elbows, knees, to wear down the opponent or force them into a better grappling position. Sporting competitions generally don't strike, instead focus on pure grappling. The range of techniques possible in sporting competition is much higher because many of the techniques being used wouldn't be practical against a combatant. The sport of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is more popular as a sport than as the fighting system nowadays. I first started Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in 2022 when a work colleague invited me to his gym. I'd heard about it from podcasts and I thought I'd try it out. My first impression was that it was a sophisticated and elegant martial art, which really appealed to me. Learning techniques requires attention to detail and dedication to utilize and master, and many variations of a single technique can exist. I also heard that it had a self-defense component, which was something I felt I needed to learn. The COVID years left me feeling very uncomfortable and powerless, so I wanted something that would give me strength, independence, and a sense of control. It also looked like a good way to lose weight, get fit, and stay healthy. When you start Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, you start as a white belt and work your way up to a blue belt, then purple belt, brown belt, and finally black belt. Some gyms have some other belts, but I'll discuss that later. The road to black belt is long, taking on average about 10 years, which is longer than most martial arts. White belts have a fundamentals class that they typically join, which teaches them the basic positions and submissions of Jiu-Jitsu. The positions you might expect to explore include guard, half guard, mount, side mount, and the back. Some basic joint locks you might learn include Kimura, Americana, arm bars, and straight ankle locks. And some of the basic chokes you might learn as well include a rear naked choke and an Ezekiel choke. You might also learn some basic movements such as hip escapes, also known as shrimping, shoulder rolls, and somersaults. These will often help you competing with others, which is what we typically call rolling. Just note that there's going to be some variation based on the gym that you attend. Timeline from white belt to blue belt is about 1 to 2 years, but it depends on your instructor's discretion, your abilities, and how often you decide to train. In many gyms, you'll get stripes added to your belt as a recognition of your progress within that belt. Stripes help people stay engaged as the time between belts can be many years. My first Brazilian Jiu Jitsu lesson was on a work trip interstate, so when I got home I started looking for a Jiu Jitsu gym that had self-defense in the syllabus. I soon found that was quite challenging. Sure, there were MMA gyms that did sport, BJJ, and other arts like Krav Maga, but I wanted to learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the self-defense component. After Googling for a little while, I decided to trial a gym about 30 minutes away and ask them about self-defense. After speaking with the head coach, I got the impression that they were more focused on sport and competition. Although I was a little bit disappointed, I decided to join because I figured that learning some Jiu-Jitsu was better than learning none. I could figure out the rest later. After that, I spent about 6 months in a sports-focused gym. Overall, I found teaching at this gym to be good, and I'd learnt some of the techniques that I mentioned previously. I was gaining skills in Jiu-Jitsu, losing weight, and it was nice meeting like-minded people. There was a culture where people of higher belts would take the time to roll with lower level belts. I think it's important to show your appreciation to the higher belts when they're doing this, because they're taking time out from their original training session. However, there were a few issues that I faced at this gym. About 3 months in, I was asked to rent a gi, which is jacket and pants, and the head coach said that was okay, or so I thought. When I gave the jacket and pants back to him, he said, I'm the only person that's handed in a gi before, and that he wasn't going to do people's dirty laundry. And I was asked to pay for it. So this came as a surprise because the first gym that I originally went to had a gi rental service and they would do laundry for you. In the end, I paid for it because I thought it was still useful and I didn't want to cause any conflict. But from there, I didn't really speak much with the head coach because of that experience. There were a few other sort of awkward interactions at that gym, which made me decide to leave, but I think I'll put that in another video. Towards the end of the 6 months, I was already reflecting on my experience with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and whether I wanted to continue. I was enjoying feeling fitter and slimmer, meeting new people and getting better at Jiu Jitsu, but I got the feeling I'd wandered away from my primary reason for starting, which is self-defense. That, combined with some of the uncomfortable interactions I had, made me start looking for alternatives. So again, I started Googling about self-defense Jiu-Jitsu and found the online Gracie Combatives course, which I purchased around February 2023. The Gracie Combatives program is an online self-defense fundamentals course created by Rener and Ryron Gracie, the grandsons of Helio Gracie, who founded Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. There's a bit of nuance to that statement, but that's good enough for this video. The course costs $250, which gives you access to the videos covering 36 self-defense techniques, which also includes striking. However, you'll notice there is some crossover with the sport. It gets taught in person at Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gyms that are essentially franchises of Rener and Ryron's gym in Torrance, California. A number of other courses are taught in these gyms, such as Master Cycle, which takes you from blue belt all the way to black belt. Just so we're clear, I'm not getting paid to advertise Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or Gracie Combatives or Master Cycle. It's just something that I've found helpful. In February, I started practicing the techniques by myself, but I understood that could only go so far. So I started looking at places where I could train the techniques. On their website, I found a training center about 50 minutes away. That was even further than my original gym, which was about 30 minutes away. But I decided to trial it because I was determined to learn self-defense. I attended and was convinced this is closer to what I wanted, but I hesitated because joining a new gym felt like I was going backwards. Because I'd already rolled 6 months at my previous gym, but I wasn't allowed to roll until I had joined Master Cycle. So something like this would take months. Also, I was concerned about gaining weight in the meantime because the lessons were less physically active than what I was used to. At that point, I had to make a decision. Do I continue focusing on the sport and neglect the self-defense aspect? Or do I delay rolling for a few months to learn self-defense? In March 2023, I decided that learning self-defense was more important, and I left my first gym for a Gracie gym. When I went to the Gracie gym, they gave me an attendance card, which explains a lot about how the Gracie Combatives course works. In a nutshell, you have to train for a minimum of 8 months before you can test for a Combatives belt, which is a white belt with a navy stripe in the middle of it. This belt sits between white and blue and is unique to the Gracie style of gym. It proves that you have a certain level of proficiency in the 36 techniques. There are also a few other things you need to do before you test for the Combatives belt. First, you need to do each lesson 3 times and complete at least 10 reflex development classes, which essentially combine multiple techniques in common fighting scenarios. To access reflex development classes, you need to complete each lesson twice. This actually helps you when you do the Combatives test. One more major difference, apart from no rolling until reaching Master Cycle, is new stripes were handed out at the end of 20 lessons. That means it could take as little as 1 month to earn a stripe on your white belt. This approach was completely different to my old gym, which would do invite-only grading every 6 months. Or you could pay for an early grading. In the case of some senior belts, they would actually surprise them while in the middle of rolling with their new belt. At the same time, I hadn't received any stripes from my other gym, and I would have to wait at least 3 months for another grading. That also influenced my decision to leave, because I didn't feel I'd be losing much visual progress if I left. As of this video, I've been attending a Gracie gym for about 3 times a week. Currently, I have 2 stripes and I'm about 9 lessons away from getting a 3rd stripe. I've completed every lesson once and almost twice. Hopefully I should be able to complete all the lessons twice in about 4 weeks or so, which would give me access to reflex development classes. One key thing to mention about the 36 techniques compared with the other class is that many of the moves are similar, but the lens is different. If there isn't some kind of self-defense context or application, then it isn't really taught in Gracie Combatives. An example might be, when learning how to do a triangle from guard, you learn how to transition from blocking punches in closed guard, which is also called punch block stage 1. You might also learn a set of variations on the same technique. An example would be the giant killer variation of triangle, where you first have to pull off someone who's heavier than you in order to do the triangle first. Some people might think it's just semantics, but I think it does help to have that self-defense context. Something I like to do is approach each move with a sense of skepticism, trying to see where it might work and not work. One question I asked the other day was, when taking the back, what happens if the bad guy stands up? And then from there, the instructor showed some ways to prevent them from getting up or disengaging from them as they're standing up. Another aspect I appreciate about the gym is the sense of humor of the instructors. We have a brown belt and a blue belt who've been training together for a few years now, and they seem to have a good working relationship, which shows positively in the actual class. So that concludes my experience with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu from the last 12 months. To summarize, taking up Brazilian Jiu Jitsu over the last 12 months has been a great experience, helping me to lose weight, meet new people, and gain a sense of power back in my life. I hope to keep doing it in future. From here, my immediate goals is to access the Master Cycle program so I can start rolling again and learning new techniques. I'm also preparing for the Gracie Combatives belt, which I should be able to test after November. If you've made it to this point, thanks so much for your attention, and I hope to see you again next time.